The U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform met to examine why government shutdowns occur and what role lawmakers should play in preventing them. The Center Square reporter Christine Johnson reports committee members examined possible long-term solutions aimed at reducing future funding lapses while minimizing disruptions to government operations and the Americans who rely on federal services. Now, while recognizing that there are rare cases in which they are helpful, Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro said continuing resolutions, or CRs, which provide temporary funding for government services when Congress can't complete the appropriations process, it often makes matters worse, she said. Now, while there was bipartisan discussion from both sides yesterday, Oklahoma Republican U.S. Senator James Lankford, he highlighted legislation that he and New Hampshire Democratic U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan have been working on since 2019. Lankford said that during a government shutdown, lawmakers, they're still able to leave Washington and return to their home districts. Now, under his proposal, Congress would be required to remain in session 7 days a week, focused solely on appropriations until a funding agreement is reached. Now, Lankford argued that the measure would shift the pressure and consequences of a shutdown away from federal workers and onto Congress, holding lawmakers accountable to reach a solution. California Republican U.S. Representative Tom McClintock yesterday said he supported Lankford's proposal, saying that it would make a simple procedural change by providing appropriations bills with the same expedited consideration in the Senate that reconciliation bills already receive.
Now, this isn't a cure-all. The fiscal decisions attendant to the budget aren't going to get any easier. And since the Senate and House are designed to disagree, it's still going to require intense negotiation between the two houses. But it would at least remove the blockage that often prevents that discussion from taking place, and it reduces the temptation to misuse reconciliation in order to bypass closure.
Now, witness Shalonda Young, former director of the Office of Management and Budget, she said she did not believe Lankford's proposal would be the best solution. Young also opposed automatic CRs, saying that they could give the president more power during budget negotiations and create opportunities for bad actors to delay or manipulate appropriations for political gain. While Young did not present a specific legislative proposal to address these types of shutdowns, she agreed that changes to the government funding process are needed.
These tactics allow the institution to continue to limp along, deepening the dysfunction most Americans now expect. If the goal is institutional restoration, reclaiming Congress's spending authority is a logical starting point.
Now, with both parties acknowledging the need for reform, the hearing ultimately did not end with any conclusive solution, leaving lawmakers to continue debating how to best prevent future government shutdowns. But government shutdowns aren't the only thing legislators could be haggling over with no real solutions in sight. They could also be haggling over how to deal with the ballooning national debt and increased spending on entitlement programs. Well, joining us to discuss some of their recent research on the cost of the national debt to taxpayers and what options there are to deal with it is William McBride, Tax Foundation Chief Economist. Will, thanks for taking time with the states. Let's talk about the national debt, the trajectory you guys looked at from some congressional records and spending authorities. It's only going up.
That's right. Not a pretty picture, but it's kind of the same picture it's been for many years now. That's right. It's an upward trajectory on the debt and on the deficits. Where the new thing, I guess, is that we're entering new territory for the country. We're breaking different types of records every year. We're spending more than $1 trillion on interest on the debt. That's a new record. It's exceeding defense spending. Never done that before. We're hitting, as far as the debt to GDP ratio, we're about 100% now. The record is 106%. We'll blow through that in about 4 years. And just goes up from there. So it's we're certainly getting into a risky area with the debt and the deficits. Deficits are above 6%, going higher. We've never had that kind of projection out there. So very dangerous stuff right now.
And some of the information you guys have in your report, publicly held debt as a share of gross domestic product, a record high expected within the next 4 years, as you outlined. But looking further down the line there, Bill, you got 2056. It's going to rise to 175% of GDP. But spending, Will, is also going to continue to grow. Is there a way to balance this out?
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, we need to first, recognize the problem. What's driving the debt higher? It is spending, and the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, that tracks this and puts out an annual publication with new projections every year. A bipartisan organization serving Congress. They're very clear what's driving this. It is the big entitlement programs, namely Social Security and Medicare, that are growing faster than GDP and have been for decades and are projected to continue doing so forever. So that's kind of the definition of unsustainable right there. As it is, they've grown to such a level that these programs, the healthcare entitlements and Social Security together, are approaching about half of the federal budget. They were essentially zero back, decades ago, and they've grown to about half the budget. They're going higher. Interest on the debt is going to almost a quarter of the budget. So about 3/4 of the budget in the next coming years will be entitlement spending and interest on the debt. That is, it's leaving defense and everything else as a very small share of the budget. So everything's getting squeezed out, and we need to at least all recognize the problem that is the growing entitlement spending.
I want to talk a bit about some of the different types of taxing options there are, and whether just increasing taxes alone is going to be able to address this. But on these entitlement programs, yesterday here with the states, we talked about that announcement out of HHS, spending $1 billion for California and Minnesota, and you had another individual who was busted for $500 million of certain types of Medicaid fraud, and whether or not those dollars are going to be brought back or clawed back. Is entitlement fraud something that, if it addressed, could help stem this problem?
That's an aspect of it, certainly. I mean, because these programs are so big, and there's always a degree of fraud, or it's the broader categories, improper payments. Every year, the government measures the improper payments, and it is in the billions of dollars, hundreds of billions, in some years. And it's the big ones are Medicare and Medicaid, not so much Social Security. But it's really the healthcare programs, the big ones, that have a lot of fraud, but more broadly, improper payments, payments going to the wrong people, and the government has a difficult time, getting that money back. So yes, that would help. It's not the only problem, but that would help.
And we'll talk about maybe some of the potential solutions there could be, but always seems to be the case with a lot of government elected officials. They may talk about the need to increase what they call revenue, what you and I may call tax, but go through some of the different taxes that are being proposed, that have been talked about for years, that may come up during political campaign seasons, and whether or not increasing these taxes alone is going to be able to solve this deficit issue.
Yeah, so every year we have proposals to basically tax the rich in various ways, and there's a whole cottage industry, if you will, of tax experts that come up with new ways to do that every year. We saw a lot of those rolled out under the Biden administration. New ways to tax capital gains. I'm not going to go into the gory details, but essentially different ways to tax the rich. We saw 5 years ago from Senators Sanders and Warren proposals to tax wealth at the federal level, which has never been done before, and it's probably unconstitutional. But those two senators are proposing wealth taxes once again as we go into the next campaign season for the next administration. Some other Democrats have supported those ideas. So putting aside the unconstitutionality of a wealth tax, we have looked at how much revenue could be raised from that idea. as well as, what are the economic effects and what are the effects of, the revenue at the end of the day, accounting for the economic effects and avoidance behavior, which is quite substantial in the case of a wealth tax, based on what we know where it's been implemented in Europe and other places around the world. We can see there's a lot of avoidance and tax planning around it. We looked at the sort of more, certainly the more constitutional ideas, simply raising top income tax rates. Several senators have proposed that. And we looked at, on the payroll tax, there's proposals to lift the payroll tax cap. It's currently, 12.4% that the payroll tax that applies up to a wage cap of $184,000. That's always the way Social Security has been designed. That's its major funding. And this proposal to just simply blow through the cap and apply the tax to all wages. So that'd be another tax on the rich. So we looked at, that. We looked at even ideas that we don't have in this country that other countries have. A value-added tax is a big consumption tax. So we just went through all the ways to raise a bunch of revenue, basically, constitutional or not constitutional, tried or not tried in this country. All the ways to raise several $1 trillion. And all of them have their problems, basically. All of them cause some degree of economic drag, reduced economic growth, investment, wages, job growth, et cetera, and avoidance and tax planning around the tax. So you don't, at the end of the day, accounting for all that stuff, you don't actually get the revenues that you hoped for, certainly that the advocates hoped for all of these ideas, but particularly for the most popular ideas that we're seeing proposed, the taxes on the rich, as well as President Trump's favorite idea, which is raising tariffs. We looked at, raising tariffs to the highest level possible to raise the most revenue. And we're not there yet, but we may be getting there, who knows. And that too has problems. It causes some degree of economic decline. And at the end of the day, that also has declining revenue gains over time, so that you can't actually solve this problem, even with these huge tax increases. What you would get is the continuing problem of fast growing spending programs, combined with now a slower economy, and one that cannot, as a result, support the revenues to pay for the spending that we have. So it's simply not the right solution. If you're not, the bottom line is, if you're not going after the source of the problem, you're just you're creating other problems.
I've heard it said that you're just throwing more taxpayer fuel into the fire and it burns right up. And for some reason it escapes me who said it, but it kind of goes along those lines of you talking about the avoidance of certain types of things. And somebody said that if you want to change behavior, tax it. So interesting kind of thinking there. But again, all these different tax options you laid out, you guys looked at the individual income tax, the corporate income tax, the wealth tax, the tariffs, the payroll taxes, the consumption taxes, all of these different things. You're saying that even if they increase these in various capacities, that's just not going to be enough to address the growing deficit.
That's absolutely right. It doesn't come anywhere close. It would take a tax increase much larger than we have ever implemented since World War II, just to close what we call the primary deficit. Forget about the interest on the debt, just to close the gap between the program spending and the revenues coming in. And so even if you get over that hurdle, again, you have all these problems of, it has economic costs and avoidance problems, and you don't raise the revenue at the end of the day that you expect.
So Will, what is the ultimate conclusion here? What should happen in the Tax Foundation's estimation?
The research is meant to redirect policymakers and the public broadly to the source of the problem and the only way out of it, without a lot of problems and economic damage. And that is to address this entitlement spending that's growing on autopilot Literally, it's not checked by Congress on an annual basis. It's not part of their budgeting process. Since the 1970s, it's been put on autopilot, and it goes up faster than the economy grows. So that's a problem, and it has to be addressed. And so that's really where this paper points to, is we really have to, probably in the context of something like a fiscal commission, which has been tried before, not always succeeded, but the last time we did it with Social Security, that's how we did it in the early 80s. It was a fiscal commission that adjusted the program benefits, and it raised some taxes. So it's probably going to be some bipartisan approach where there's some of both. But that's what is going to be required to balance the books at the end of the day.
William McBride, Tax Foundation Chief Economist, greatly appreciate you joining the States today, and we'll check back in on this issue and plenty of other things that the Tax Foundation looks at. And we'll be right back here with more from the States.